Coming up next on Headline Humboldt, local attorney and political commentator Eric Kirk joins us to talk about the recent indictments of Donald Trump, how he's impacted politics these past 7 years, and what we can do to recover our sense of national unity. Also, this year's Street Art Festival in Eureka has given residents and tourists a bright new splash of color to reckon with on Eureka's main drag. Coming up now on Headline Humboldt. From the top of Humboldt Hill, this is Headline Humboldt. I'm James Falk. Thanks for joining us. Whatever your politics, the last several years have been an ugly time in American society. Since 2015, in the run-up to the 2016 election, our country has been divided and largely at one another's throats because of the personalities and politics surrounding Donald J. Trump. 2 impeachments, 2 special counsel investigations, accusations flying back and forth, levels of vitriol higher than I've ever seen. And at the center of it all is a man who has become a Rorschach test on American politics and partisan loyalties. And now the Department of Justice and others have stepped in to bring what many consider to be legal accountability, while whole legions of others believe it to be a partisan witch hunt. Which is right? I, like others, have a definite opinion, one you probably know if you've watched this show over the past 3 years. The problem, of course, is that over these same years, people's perceptions of the truth and its importance to the system and our institutions has suffered perhaps irreparable harm. That's part of what I want to talk to you about tonight with our guest, attorney Eric Kirk. How can we as a society go back to an era where in our debates and in our institutions, we accept as Americans the same basic starting facts? Can it even be done? We'll be back with news and the interview.
Friends and supporters of KEET TV, we are calling all who have a passion for public television on the North Coast. KEET is looking for a diverse group of people to join its Community Advisory Board, or CAB. CAB members play an advising role to management and act as KEET's ambassadors within the community. Meetings are held quarterly on Zoom. Go to KEET.org, find the link for CAB, and get involved today. We look forward to meeting you.
This year's Street Art Festival in Eureka took on Broadway, bringing some extraordinary graffiti and brush paint artists from thousands of miles away to join local talent as they made a big splash of color around our otherwise mostly gray city. From the Herrick overpass into downtown, the colorful upgrade this year is turning heads.
This year, over 600 artists threw their hat in the ring for one of 18 projects focused around Eureka's entrance via Highway 101 through Broadway.
We are standing in front of this awesome mural by Ecosario, one of our international artists this year. He came into town from Puerto Rico and he painted 2 pieces for the festival. This is the second one and he just wrapped it up. His first mural that he painted, which is a retaining wall on the 101, is a mixture of brush paint and spray paint. Okay. And this piece is all spray paint. And he designed it in kind of this monochromatic blues to match the existing color of the building. Yeah. Because it's not a full coverage mural, there's still quite a bit of the building popping through, so he really wanted it to look like it belongs on here. The bubble motif is something that comes through in a lot of his work. You can see it in his other mural as well. Yeah. And it's fun to be able to see multiple pieces by an artist to really be able to tell what is their quintessential style, what makes their work their own. So we are currently on our 6th year of the Eureka Street Art Festival, and it started when Michelle Cartledge, who is one of the co-owners of the Humboldt Cider Company, was on the Economic Development Commission. Okay. I got roped in because I'm an artist. Yeah. And the third of our trio is Swan Asbury, who is a city planner at the city of Eureka. Right. And the 3 of us started the planning. We pulled together the first year really quickly, and now we are just cruising in a lot of ways. The festival was really born out of this hope to bring more color to Eureka and to use art as a tool for economic development. Every year, we are always blown away by the reception that the community has for this festival. We're used to a festival where it's one day or maybe 2 days and you go down and it's a big party. Yeah. And so this is a little bit of a different format for a festival. It's a week long, people are painting all over the place. This year we're pretty spread out, and
Right.
so you might not even know what's going on. You're driving down Broadway and you're like, oh my goodness, what is that? That is
Right.
incredible. So there's this element of surprise and delight with putting these murals up throughout town. And then once the festival is over, these murals stay up.
Yeah.
So we have seen increase in tourism for folks coming through Eureka. We have seen an increase in the length of stay that people hang out while they are exploring and they want to check them out more.
Yeah.
And we have seen the ability to really raise up a lot of our local artists who either are making a living at murals or want to make a living painting murals.
I caught up with local artists Blake Reagan and Lacey Dane as they were working on a mural spanning 2 walls at the Humboldt Trim Company's new dispensary location on 5th Street in Eureka.
We're kind of marrying the redwood forests with some Brazilian jungles with like giant passion flower. This building has been painted in 40 years and it's heavily textured stucco, so we used about 120% more primer than usual and paint as usual because of the surface area of stucco. And so we felt like the whole building needed a new skin, so we gave it one. And I like to add color to my primer. I don't like to just do straight white because it's too bright. Yeah, nice medium tone of blue.
The property owners will have an idea of who they want to paint and what they want. And so often our job is just to help facilitate those connections.
With a whopping 100 murals completed to date, the Eureka Street Art Festival has been an overwhelming success. For Headline Humboldt, this is Ryan Hutson.
A new arts fund through the Humboldt Area Foundation has been established, funded by the sales of Ferndale artist Joan Catchery's work to encourage the next generation of local artists. Catchery passed away this spring, leaving a significant body of work behind. Awards from the fund will help support local artists and art development in our area. The fund will be supported by the sale of her work through the Ferndale Arts Gallery, where she was a longtime member.
Joan Catchery, who we lost this spring, actually in January, I think is when Joan passed away, was a longtime member of the Ferndale Arts Gallery. Yeah. And she's an amazing artist. As a young woman, she attended Ferndale High. She was 3rd generation from Ferndale. Her first big project was painting a mural of beakers and caps or something on the science wall in her school at the high school in Ferndale. I'm curious to see if it still exists.
Yeah, that'd be amazing.
But she went off to a art school in Oakland and got a degree in, I think, fashion illustration. And then she worked over in San Francisco for several years. I think she moved up through the ranks doing illustrations for the city of Paris.
Wow.
And even got to walk on the runway once in a, I don't remember what the name of.
Like a fashion show or something.
Yeah, in a fashion show.
Wow.
It was a big
in
deal.
Paris.
And she
That
moved
sounds
up
like a big
head of
deal.
her art department. But I think she probably grew bored and she went back east. She showed in huge, fantastic galleries. There are places like Marriott's Hotel own collections of art's work, of Joan's work. There are owners from HBO, IBM, a fashion, not a fashion design, Design Arts, I think, owns her work.
Yeah.
A lot of private collections. But when she returned home, this was a thriving art community. Every store, it seemed like, in Ferndale had a little gallery. There were galleries up and down Ferndale Street.
Yeah.
She joined the Candy Stick Gallery at that point, owned by Viola McBride. And this gallery was just starting. So eventually she joined this sometime in the mid-90s.
I think she'd be really glad because we often talked about how hard it is for young people coming along to be artists now. We had a much different time. Ferndale was a mecca. Almost every place on Main Street was a gallery.
Yeah.
And I grew up with the craft fairs where people could make a living just selling your work. So we're really appreciative of how hard it is for people now
Yeah.
to to devote themselves to art. So I think this means a lot to her.
It's the Joan K. Tree Memorial Scholarship Fund, and it's a new fund. It's one of our newest funds at the foundation. We're really excited. We're still hammering out some details with the family, but we expect to make the first award in January of 2024.
Okay.
And it sounds like it's going to be open to all Humboldt County students, both at the high schools and then art students at CR and Cal Poly Humboldt.
Okay.
So we're still, like I said, hammering out exactly what that looks like. It might be, going towards students who are studying painting or sculpture. It could open up to all forms of art students, but we're really excited to just be part of Joan's passion and helping the family channel that passion into support for the community and the next generation of artists.
We have such a treasure in KEET TV. I think everybody should be a member. Think about all of the news programs, all of the mystery programs and masterpiece programs that are available to us here. I love them all. It's hard for me to decide what is my favorite program because there are so many. So please, become a member today. And thank you.
Hi, I'm Katie, Texas. It is the first Saturday night in Eureka, and that means it's time for Arts Alive. Welcome to Old Town Art Crawl.
We're joined now by local attorney and local political commentator, Politico, as they say, Eric Kirk.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us once again. You're always handy to come in here and give us a learned response to the political happenings of the day. And as they've been for the last 7 years, Trump is at the center of the zeitgeist right now, in a lot of ways. So, 3 indictments so far. It looks like there might be a 4th indictment coming. And we've all kind of as a society, I think, both sides of this debate have wrestled with, where are we going after Trump? Even though he's not retired yet and he's running for office again, in 20 years, what are people going to look back and think about Trump? And I think both sides think that they have that figured out, or at least, how is this moment right now that we're in, with these indictments pending and a 4th one maybe coming, how is that going to be determinative in terms of Trump's legacy overall?
Well, I could probably spend hours on that.
Sure.
But I think a lot of it's going to depend on what happens next year. If Trump wins the presidency again, he is running. It looks like he's going to be the Republican nominee because nobody else has it together.
Yeah.
I don't know what the consequences will be of that. Our institutions, our democratic institutions, will be tested even further if he does win. If he doesn't win, will his movement just disappear? Will somebody else ride the waves of that in? I don't know. It doesn't look like it's going to be DeSantis. His campaign is just bombed as people got to know him.
Yeah.
So who replaces him? We've got actually some sane Republican candidates, but they don't seem to have a chance, although they would probably have the best chance at beating Biden.
Exactly right. It's like you come to the middle during the general election, and they seem like they'd be attractive there, but not necessarily with the home voters. Yeah. Have you read the indictments that have been issued so far?
I have.
Okay. So which of those 3 do you think at this point presents the most threat to him?
Depends on what you mean, whether you're talking about political or legal. The one with the documents case, I think, is the strongest of the 3, and probably the 4th. There's going to be state charges, it looks like, in Georgia next
related to the redoing the election.
But,
right?
But as a legal challenge, the toughest one he has is the one with the classified documents. Yeah. You had documents that were classified, sensitive. He had them. He refused to turn them over. Seems like end of story on that one. These other charges are a bit more difficult. I was actually really underwhelmed with Bragg's charge. That's the first one pertaining to the hush money in New York.
Yeah.
But this one is probably more serious in terms of political impact, because it may be the one that has people kind of, even supporters, kind of looking at it and saying, yeah, what's going on here?
Bragg's or?
No, the Washington, D.C.
Oh, Jack Smith's.
Jack Smith's second
charges about the January 6th.
About January 6th, and he has some defenses to it, but are they going to affect? What's going to happen is there's going to be a long political discussion about what happened, the defenses may be problematic as a matter of law, but they're going to be very problematic as a matter of politics. He's basically saying, "Hey, I didn't know. I was an idiot. I just trusted my attorneys." Right?
Yeah. Never do that. Right?
Right. Exactly. But he's got a problem because everybody who he appointed advised him one way, and then he brought in people that he clearly were saying things he wanted to hear. We're talking, of course, Giuliani, Powell, Eastman, and the rest, and they were known. There was Team Sane and Team Not Sane, or whatever, how it was termed, and he was completely not listening to all the people who he had actually appointed, Barr and others, who told him, "No, you lost the election. It's done. It's over."
Yeah.
And he continued. But of course, there's going to be the First Amendment defense. He say, you have the right to lie. You have a First Amendment right to lie, even if you're the president, but not in conjunction with certain other things.
Yeah, and and working with other people, potentially the conspiracy aspect, all of that. What do you? Did you watch the January 6th hearings with Congress?
Much of it. I didn't watch all of it, but I watched a lot of it.
When you were just looking on from that perspective, did it seem like there was a chargeable case there?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Again, a lot of it will depend on a lot of the details that come out during discovery. But I mean, I actually learned something new with these indictments, that he had actually appointed Clark to head the DOJ as Attorney General. I don't know how it works. I don't know how he was even removed. I've been looking into that, but apparently for a few days he was the Attorney General until the Department of Justice, all the attorneys
they rebelled
and threatened to quit. And I don't think they even realized he had done whatever is necessary to make him temporary. Of course, it's supposed to be confirmed by the Senate, but
there's a window, right, where you could serve and not.
That's right, and by the time that happened, he was in theory going to be out of office. But if he was still in office, it would have to be confirmed by the Senate. But if he's still in office and he was following Mr. Eastman's advice and Clark's. Might have been a coup, might have been martial law. That's what they were talking about.
Yeah, the Insurrection Act.
Yeah. It's just it was scary as to what they were proposing. Was it a plan? But the other defense is going to make is this plan didn't really have a chance. It was stupid. It was it depended on Vice President Pence cooperating. It depended on a lot of people cooperating with a lot of stuff. But the point is, he tried it.
Yeah. And is that an excuse in the law? If your plan to rob the bank is stupid, it's still a plan to rob the bank, right?
And if you conspire and take certain steps towards that, right? Even if it never had a chance of happening, of being successful, it's still, you don't do that. You don't make movements towards that, especially if he really did appoint Clark. That's a big deal.
Yeah. The interesting thing about the documents case is Judge Eileen Cannon. Who seems to be not shy about issuing rulings that will be controversial. And I can't read her mind, so I don't know if the motive is to help Trump, but it seems like that is the effect. What are your thoughts on what you've seen from her, especially her most recent chiding of the prosecution?
And it turns out that she was prompted by that from watching some right-wing television. I don't know if it was Fox or Newsmax, I'm not sure what, but she got her prompt from them. If she wants to help him, that's not the way, because she's going to get herself removed.
Is there any recourse for that in terms of the long-term picture? If there's someone who seems like, according to the opinion of the majority, say, of legal minds in a state or whatever else, does the Bar Association take action? Is there anything that a judge can, how can they be removed? I guess?
The prosecutor can make a motion to remove for bias, and obviously she would refuse it, and then it goes up above her. But the courts can also do it on their own.
Okay.
And that may actually happen. The circuit that she's in really nailed her to the wall.
Yeah, the last time. Yeah. So she's she's on the record as having been opprobrium or whatever.
Right.
So I've been watching the Republican primary as much as this has gone on, and it seems like Chris Christie has experienced a conversion from his time as a Trump supporter. What are your thoughts on how he's attacked this situation, and do you think he has a chance at all of securing the nomination?
I don't even know that that's his goal. I think he went in there to do what he did to Rubio, to get into a debate with Trump and destroy him.
Yeah.
Marco Rubio, of course, famously just failed in a debate, and it was Christie who was aggressive that did that.
Yeah.
He wanted to, and this is rumored to be why Trump is maybe thinking about, maybe I don't want to be in the debates.
Yeah.
Because Chris Christie, that's his, he's apparently, at least the way he says it, he wants to be, to save the Republican Party.
Yeah.
He has become a never-Trumper, basically. You know, people are writing about it. But does he have a chance of winning? I doubt it. I doubt if anybody who, for instance, he's pro-choice, I don't think he can get the Republican nomination and be pro-choice.
As I look at it, and I didn't think Trump would win in 2016, so I'm going to lay that out there. I'm not someone you want to place bets on in terms of election predictions. I also thought, well, anyway. Looking at the situation now with the trials piling up and the indictments piling up, how would Trump win? Like, a part of me is just like, there's no way. But can you explain to us how you think that there's a possibility that he could still pull it out, even though for a lot of us it's...
It seems hard. I mean, his support within the Republican Party has actually increased. I mean, if I was like a Republican conspiracy theorist, I would theorize that the reason that Trump is being charged is to bolster that so that he becomes the nominee, so that it's easier for Biden to win, right? You know, I mean, it's just. But I think that's very elaborate. But it's just if I was going to do that, I think he has a chance of winning in the general, especially if things go really bad for Biden, if more of his age issues come about. Or,
even though Trump's close to the same age.
and doesn't seem to be as healthy.
Yeah.
But I think it's unlikely that he's going to get the independent voters. He lost them in 2020 because of the chaos. I don't think he can reclaim them especially if he's not showing that there's going to be any less chaos. He will get a solid 80% of the Republican vote, it sounds like, because there's just a complete different pictures of reality that two, I won't say halves of the country, but 40% of the country have of reality. And they have a very different view of reality. And so he probably can win the nomination. I find it hard to believe that he can win the general, but like you, I also didn't think it would happen in 2016, so I never say never. Yeah. What if something happens with Biden that depresses the Democratic vote? Democratic voters turn on their own a lot when they feel there's sellouts or things like that, and if they sit out the election and Trump pulls out an electoral college win again with fewer votes, but because the electoral college is in his favor, I can't say it's impossible. I would say it's unlikely. But 2016 was unlikely.
Yeah, absolutely. The third way. Have you heard of the group that was potentially talking about with Manchin?
Yes.
Can you talk just briefly about how that could affect the results?
I'm not sure how it would affect it, actually. We've seen a couple polls that are inconclusive, but Kyrsten Sinema in Arizona has declared that she might run as an independent, and the polls there show that it actually benefits Gallego, the front-running Democrat, because she apparently draws more Republicans who don't want anything to do with Trumpism. And if Carrie Lake wins the nomination, and she just declared that she's running, it'll split that vote. So nationally, could Manchin have the same effect, drawing away Republicans who would have voted for Trump just because he has an R in front of his name?
Yeah, and there's no other options.
Right, but they like him, Manchin, who may leave the party. So I don't know who it'll benefit, honestly, but it will certainly have an impact, as possibly the run of Cornel West would hurt Biden. But again, there are a certain number of people who always vote third party anyway. So how much does a third party run really affect the outcome, even if he got as much as 4%? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, the only difference with the third way, that's the right name for it, isn't it? Is that they have the secure on the ballot for 50 states, right? Isn't that?
You don't even have to be on 50 states. You can run for president and be in. The question is if you are in the key swing states.
Yeah, if you can get the votes from those places.
Third way actually is a different different reference. It's a reference to the Democrats in the 1990s coming up with a third way, the alternative liberalism, and
Well,
so don't
what's
confuse
the
them.
name I'm getting wrong?
I think it's just third party. Just say it.
Okay,
It's
okay.
Manchin has a different name for what they're doing, and I'm
Okay.
forgetting what it is. The no labels or something
Yeah,
like
yeah,
that.
yeah. No labels. Yeah, I
Yeah.
think that's right. I'm sorry about that, folks.
Yeah.
Now, we're approaching the trials on this thing. Do you think that there's time between now and Election Day for these trials to get underway? And don't you think that's an absolute requirement in terms of having trials like this before an election, or what are your thoughts?
Well, ostensibly, at least according to legal analysts, what Trump is pushing for is to delay them,
Yes.
so that maybe he can test the theory that he can pardon himself. But it does look like the prosecutions in all the cases are pushing for early trials. I believe Jack Smith is actually wanting to move this latest charges, the more serious of the charges, up as quickly as January.
Yeah, I saw that. Yeah.
Yeah, and which would really be bad for Republicans, because it's right at the point where the primaries start, right? And what kind of impact is it going to have there? Is it going to weaken them? Will he still be nominee? I don't know, but it may not be in time to affect the outcome of the Republican primaries, but definitely enough to impact his ability to win over independents if he's convicted, or even if he's not convicted, but a lot of facts come out that that are ultimately deemed legally not criminal, but the fact is there's going to be a national discussion of what he did, and there are a lot of people in denial of what he did, and it's not going to be like the January 6th Commission where people just tune out and don't watch it.
Yeah, because it's a presidential election. And
That's
people
right.
are riveted by that. One of the things, and the main questions I wanted to ask you is that we're kind of in a situation now where each side has its own bevy of facts and information, its own sphere of influence. What do we need to do as a country to get back to a place where we all kind of have the same basic starting facts in our public policy debates?
I don't know. See, we don't have, Walter.
You don't have the answer?
Get
out of here.
Yeah, we don't have Walter Cronkite anymore. Remember? That's the way it was.
Exactly.
Or any of the people that were, of course, he was accused of liberal bias too, but he basically said, F you, I'm Walter Cronkite, and that was it. But it was just, but we don't have a common media. We've got different media. We don't even have two medias. We got a bunch of different medias, and we've got social media. So how we handle that, I don't know. I will say Merrick Garland did a service towards that today, though. He announced that David Weiss will be appointed special counselor for Hunter Biden.
Yeah.
And if there is something there, justice requires that they pursue it, or pursue it to the point where they say, no, there's nothing there, but there needs to be something definitive. You're not going to get it out of the Republican weaponization committees. That's going to be totally agendized. But I think a formal statement one way or another, and of course there'll always be people who don't agree with it one way or another, but
at least they get the same treatment on the surface.
That's right. And also the notion that a president is not a king.
Yeah.
And therefore his family are not royalty.
Yep. That's all our time for today. Again, we could talk about this forever and ever, and I'm sure we'll have you back on.
Well, thanks again.
Well, thanks for coming on the show. That's it for tonight. Stay tuned. Stay informed.